Welcome everyone to Tell of the Dragons. Tonight we're joined by Ninth Hanshi Don Mathews. Took me a while to get that one out. You got a lot of stuff going on there in that title. Did you ever
Yeah.
think that you would be a ninth degree black belt?
Never in a million years.
Tell me about that journey. Tell me about when you
Never.
first started off as a white belt.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's go in the Wayback Machine
Let's do it.
and do some time traveling. Right. So back, 1973 to sometime in 81, I was working for a large, super grocery store chain. And most of that time I spent as a supervisor at night. And during that time period, I had to encounter shoplifters and drunks and people trying to rob the store and just all kind of stuff. And well, let's just say that I had to take care of business. Okay. So there was a lot of stuff going on, and I'm thinking, you know what? I need to learn how to defend myself just a little bit better than what I am. So, where I kind of grew up, there wasn't really any like, karate store or judo store or anything on every corner. So I didn't know. And in 1983, was going through the phone book, Yellow Pages, which was about a quarter-inch thick of martial arts, studios. And, every one of them was an Olympic coach. Every one of them was 6 Dan, which I had no idea what that meant at the time. And so I found one where a guy said he was a Green Beret and he was a presidential bodyguard and all kind of neat stuff. And I thought, man, that'd be pretty cool to train with this guy, right? Learn some
Right.
real close quarter fighting stuff, because that's what I was dealing with. Uh, So I went to this guy and did a little interview with him, and lo and behold, I joined his class. And so I'm going along, and things are going great. Believe it or not, it was $110 a month in
Whoa.
1983. I didn't know. I had no clue. It was Muduk Kwan, which was I guess, a form of Tong Sudo, and everything was done in Korean. There was no English. Pretty much an adult class. He didn't have any little kids running around. And
$110 a pop.
no, no. And class was from 6 to 8:30 Monday through Friday.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it was pretty intense. Pretty intense. Um, did a few forms, did a lot of fighting. We did a lot of fighting. Yeah, I can only remember really doing a couple of forms, but everything else was he was more into fighting, which
I'm sure
which
it was
suited me.
I'm sure it was fully padded headgear, hand gear.
Um, no, we had nothing. We
Yeah.
had we had we had we had our bare fists.
Right.
There was no such thing as headgear or hand pads or foot gear, or I think we did wear a cup, if I remember right, or at least I did. But the groin was open. You could hit the groin anytime you wanted.
Man.
There weren't any real rules other than to survive, and so for me it was fun because I was already doing most of that, and so it just kind of fell in line, right? So I go along, and all of a sudden, one of the guys I'm working with, he goes, "Hey," he goes, "I hear you're taking karate classes." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Why don't you come to my school?" I said, "Where's your school at?" He goes, 10 minutes from where you live. And this other school was about an hour drive.
Wow.
So
Were you going most nights?
I was going at least, I was there 4 to 5 nights every week.
Wow.
Because when I jumped into it, I'm like, no, this is what I'm going to do. This is the commitment I'm going to make. So I didn't, and I saw some people that had missed a couple classes, and they didn't get taken too kindly by the instructor. He wanted you there every single night to train, because that's what he felt the commitment should be. And So I checked out this other guy's place, and it would be in closer, and it was a different style, which back then I had no clue what style meant. I Karate, that's all I knew. Karate, judo, kung fu. Everything else I was oblivious to. And so it turned out to be an Americanized Matsubashi Shorin-ryu. Okay, whatever that meant at the time. I all I wanted to do was train. And the more I got into it, the more I loved it. The more I loved it, then I started in the competitions and went to one competition, and then we would do a competition on Saturday, and then we would turn around and do another competition on Sunday, and that's just the way it was. So I go along in that style for, oh my gosh, it was probably close to 4 years, and I'm ready to be a black belt. And the instructor that I had at the time, he said, "Hey," he goes, "I met this guy from Japan. I think we're going to change to Hanshi Mathews." So I did some research. And Hanshi Mathews was a little bit more recognized than what I was doing. And I thought, well, if I'm going to really do this, I want something that most people are going to recognize, not some offshoot of something. And so I did not take my black belt test. I trained for, let me see here, it was close to 3.5, almost 4 years, and then took my black belt test under Sensei Igaki out of Japan.
You started over, basically?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Because I felt at that time, and I still do, I think it was the right decision, that the piece of paper meant more to me coming from that than just a piece of paper. I was more concerned about the legitimacy of what I was doing
Yes.
versus just, hey, I've got a black belt, right?
Right.
And so that's what I did. I mean, it was from the day I started to the time I got my first black belt. It was probably a little over 9 years.
That is amazing.
And I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
I am thoroughly glad I did it. I wouldn't change a thing. Um, and during those times, I mean, I've got to be around some really good people throughout my career. I was very fortunate. I got to train with Fumio Demura, and I was a student of Kiyoshi Yamazaki for several years and part of his organization. And, when I opened up my school back in 2010, um, that's when I joined Yamazaki's organization. And, his was Shindo Jin and Ryu. Now, I learned a few of the forms from that style, but I told him at that point I wasn't going to go and rechange everything. I was too into Tani Hashida Ryu at the time, and so I stuck with that. I did, like I say, I did learn a couple forms from him, and then of course along the way I've put in Shotokan forms, I've put in Goju-Ryu forms, I've put in Shorin-Ryu forms, and so now my style is a combination of all kind of stuff. In fact, we even teach some Tong Soo-Do because I've got some black belts that came in from Tong Soo-Do. And so, I think it's great that we step outside the box and learn different stuff. And so it's been a great journey. Like I said, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change how I got there. All my testing along the way were under some very great people, and I'm very appreciative of that. So yeah.
So how do you decide what you're going to take from other systems and implement it into your system now?
Well, it comes down to what my students are looking for. Like I say, I had 3 black belts come in from a Tang Soo Do system, and, I was like, "Why don't we incorporate some of the forms that you're doing?" So that because, they were still training, under their instructor and, training with me. So it's like, why not learn other things? Why not open up people's minds to other philosophies and other ideas and things like that? Because I don't think there's just one way to do something. If you look at any form that there is, any true Japanese form, there's probably 10, 12 different variations. And all of them have variation for a reason. They're not wrong. They're just different, and, um, so that's what I'm about. I'm about learning. Um,
Absolutely.
and I've created 3 forms of my own for our school that were more based upon current day self-defense type stuff. Things that I've been involved in that I go, this works. So let's put it into a form.
Do you think there's been evolution of your students from when you first started and opened your doors in 15 to now? I mean, have their needs changed? Their wants?
Um, I don't know if they know that they have any needs
Uh,
in reality, because they learn whatever I teach them. Okay. Um, as far as evolution goes, oh my gosh, we've evolved. We've evolved so much in the past 3 to 4 years. Um, I don't speak in Japanese anymore. Everything's in English. Because one thing is we went from, when I started adult centric type classes to now we're children centric. And a lot of people today too are from other parts of the world. So they have their language. They're trying to learn the English language, and then you want me to try to teach them a Japanese language? It's just not feasible. It just doesn't work. And some people may not like this comment, but why do we still in America talk Japanese? Is it because it's magical? Is it because it makes it unique? Is it because it makes it different? I mean, do they speak English in Japan of American sports? Probably not. So I took out, we don't talk in Japanese anymore. We may count, now and then, just to keep it there. Um, I've changed some of the stances to make them a little bit more to the old style Okinawan instead of sport karate. And mainly because we don't have anybody that wants to compete.
really?
I think I've got one person that wants to compete, and I've said, look, here's what you need to do for competition. But the reality is, if you're only teaching sport forms, how do you translate that easily to self-defense? Because they don't work. A sport, big giant Japanese front stance doesn't work in self-defense. So then you have to go, okay, now we're going to learn self-defense. And oh, you stand up taller. For a lot of people, they can't get through that. They're like, even some of the adults that have come through, well, why don't we just do that in the first place? Right? I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, the reality is if they're not competing, why should it matter to them that they're in this sport karate stance? Right? Why don't we just they came for self-defense and fitness. Let's just teach them that. And so I've gone through and we've taken out stuff and we've rearranged and changed and made it, if you look at like I say, the old Okinawan stances, they were much taller. You still had balance. You still had to learn coordination, but they're not sport. So yes, I've evolved in a lot of different ways, a lot of different things.
Are there any non-negotiables that you're not willing to change?
No, not really.
Okay.
You know, um, in a traditional Japanese studio, there's a thing called seiza, where it's the art of kneeling. So you kneel before class and you go through a little bowing ceremony, and you do the same thing at the end of class. I took that out, mainly because, well, my knees aren't what they used to be, and neither are some of the adults that we've had in, and the kids don't know any better, any different. So we've taken that out. We've taken out a lot of the unnecessary bowing all the time. People used to say, well, you got to bow before you come into the school, and when you leave the school, and before you enter the floor, and when you leave the floor. And, if you've been in my school, and you walk in and off, during breaks, and, things like that, you'd probably bow 8, 10 times during class. And I get it. I get the respect. I understand that. But at some point in time, you've got to say, look, here's what we're going to do. And here's the rules that we're going to have for that respect, and cut out some of the unnecessary stuff.
What would the purists say to that? The karate purists.
They probably wouldn't like it too well.
Yeah.
But that's okay. They're not paying my bills. you know,
Touche.
to each his own. And if they want to still do that and go that route, have at it. But for me, and for the evolution that I want to do, and for my students, I just don't think it's necessary anymore.
That's impressive. What mind shift would benefit most of today's martial artists?
Oh my gosh. In what way are you asking that?
Well, you're willing to change. Do you feel that most people are locked into tradition? They're not willing to change? What mind shift do you
You
think
know,
to progress
so
the art forward more?
I don't think people today know any more about style than they did back when I started. Because if you go out in the world, and you even, let's say you walk up to somebody and you go, "Oh, I heard you were interested in doing karate. Did you want to do Shotokan, Goju-ryu, Shito-ryu, Isshin-ryu, Taekwondo, Shorin-ryu? What is it that you want to do?" They wouldn't have a clue as to what you're talking about. All they would probably know is the word karate.
Right.
And with all the information that we have available to us on the internet, way more than when I started, because there was no internet when I started. We know less because nobody wants to take the time and do any research.
Oh,
Nobody wants to take the time and do any research as far as schools go. All they go is see is, well, my friend Billy goes to that school over there. I'm going to go to that school, irregardless of payment, irregardless of what's being taught. And we could go down the road of McDojos and frauds that are out there in the martial arts, and as we both know, there's tons of them.
great
What?
videos though online, right?
Oh, there are some great videos, yes.
Yes.
But people don't know. They have
Yeah.
no clue. And you know, the thing too about our society today is martial arts has turned into an activity, not a discipline. Now, that's not true for everybody, because
Right.
for some people it is a discipline. It is very much, in tune with what they want to do and where they want to go, and their goals in life and stuff like that. But I'll bet 9.7 out of 10 that walk through the door, it's an activity for them. It's just something to get them to the next season of sports.
Yeah.
You know,
How has mixed martial arts changed martial arts, or has it progressed, moved martial arts forward, moved it backwards in your mind?
I think it's added to there because you've got, out of mixed martial arts, you've got the BJJ movement. And, there's a lot of kids that want to do that, and that's fine. That's what they want to do. I get people that come into my studio that go, yeah, I'm not too interested in wrestling on the ground with somebody. But if they are, have at it. If that's what you want to do, that's great. Um, there's a lot more styles because everybody and their brother has created one. So there's more to pick from. Are they right or wrong? Again, we could go back to that McDojo, fakes and frauds thing.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of those out there too. But people don't do any research. They go where their friends go.
So one more take on the mixed martial arts.
Okay.
So you and I believe share the same opinion on this. What is your take on mixed martial arts?
In what way are you asking?
Are you a fan of mixed martial arts?
There have been some very, very good mixed martial artists that have come along, that have fought in the cage. Uh, I've had some friends that have fought in the Pride. Uh, They were on the verge of getting UFC contracts, but it never came through. They were very good martial artists. There has been, in some degree, some WWE, so to speak, that has come through, that doesn't have the same values as a true martial artist. I mean, I've seen shows of, what was that, The Ultimate Fighter or whatever it was, those
Yeah.
seasons. There were some good guys on there, but then there were some episodes where they tore up the house and they destroyed everything, and they were just destroying each other and talking all that crap, and it's like, yeah, it's just not for me, you know. But I've met quite a few of some of the originals. I've sat with Randy Couture and talked with him for a long time. Chuck Liddell, Chael Sonnen, Matt Hughes, Frank Shamrock. They're all very personable, very down to earth, and they're great martial artists. And they did quite well for themselves. They didn't really go down that road of tearing up things and stuff like that. And they would sit and talk to you like you were their next door neighbor. And I thought that was great.
So you think if
Uh,
they start with a true martial arts background and they have that respect aspect, then creating their mixed martial arts style um, is more in line with martial arts as opposed to somebody that's just training the ground and pound takedown. And
it seems that way. I mean, I don't want to, go down that road of making, talking bad about them because, as a whole, what they do is very athletic and very good. Um, is it different than what we do? Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, it wasn't anything that I'd want to get into, but again, everybody has their own idea of what they want to train and how they want to train.
how has training changed for you over the years?
Well, I've slowed down a little bit. Getting up there in age does that to you. But I still love it. I still love, going through forms and going through self-defense movements and stuff like that and the weapons forms. And, you know, I, I guess at some point in time here, I'll decide to go back and compete again. One of the things I did for many years was like, I stepped away from competition and went into judging. And I did that because of all the politics that I saw and of all the bad judges that I saw. And so I did that to kind of, at least control my own ring to say, these people are going to be judged fairly. I don't care who they are. I don't care what school they come from. Because I can certainly tell you some wild stories of competitions that didn't go that way. And So I did that for quite a few years. I and then COVID kind of came along and put a stop to most of that. So hopefully here in the next few years, maybe I can come back and compete in that IMARS thing you guys got out there.
We don't want any. You don't need to come back for that.
I, I'm I'm kind of thinking I might be in that next year.
Stay back, stay away. We can zoom you in, stuff like
I'm
that.
I'm gonna think I'm gonna be an Iowa State champion. That's my goal.
There you go. That it's funny you talking about competing and the judging and whatnot. Um, you are definitely a man of integrity and action. If you see something that needs to be changed, you don't just talk about it, you just jump in and do it. And I really appreciate that about you.
Well,
You
thank
know,
you, thank you.
that leading to your being the founder of the Warriors Legacy Hall of Fame. You want to talk about that?
Well, the Warriors Legacy Hall of Fame came about. Several of us here in the area had been talking about the disconnect between the low-ranking Dons and the high-ranking Dons, and the fact that the guys that have been around for a long time, we're losing them faster than we want. And as I was coming up, I always wanted to go train with other people and pick their brains. And that's why I say I've been very fortunate to have done that. And I've got a laundry list of very great people that I've got a chance to do that with. But I don't really see the first, second, and third Dons today doing that. They're not seeking other things outside the school. I mean, I see that in my school. They're not going, hey, you know what? There's a seminar over here. Let me go train with that guy for an hour or 2 hours. And so, anyways, this whole ideology of the differences between the high and low, we wanted to kind of figure out, well, how can we bridge that gap some? That was one thing. The second part of that was that I've been to many what you would call Hall of Fame events all over the country and for many, many years. And as I sat there and watched and listened, there were a lot of people that were getting honored that didn't deserve it. It's like, I saw people that were first and second Dons getting a Hall of Fame award. Well,
Mhm.
what have you done? What have you done to deserve that? Or, a 19-year-old getting a Hall of Fame award. You haven't been around long enough, right? And as I sat thinking about this more, I kind of came up with the idea to, put this together and say, look, let's honor the people that really deserve it. Let's honor the legacy, for one. And so I sat down and put together some criteria. I said, well, what would real legacy be? Well, anybody that's true to martial arts. Six Dan, you've been around for a while. If you're legitimate, six Dan, right? I mean, here again, I've known some 20-something six Dans. That's another story. And, well, so how many years? Well, I thought, well, if you've been training 35 years, you've put your heart and soul into this. You're probably legitimate. Not everybody is that's done that long, but for the most part. And so that's kind of the criteria I came up with. Then I'm like, well, why should you have to pay for the award? I've been to events and I've paid $495 for an award. The only reason I went was because it was a different group of people to kind of network with. I could have cared less about the award. Doesn't matter to me. I was wanting to meet new people, and so that gave me that opportunity. Plus, in the area that it was in, a friend of ours lived, so it gave us a chance to visit and hang out. So it was kind of fun doing that. But 99.9% of these places are only vetting people's wallets. They don't vet the people. that they're inducting. They don't care. All they care about is bringing the money in. And so what I wanted to create was an organization that takes the time to investigate, that takes the time to vet, that takes the time to research, and make sure that these people honestly deserve recognition. And so we created this really great certificate. We've created patches. We've created a Warriors Legacy Society that honors people that have 50 years or more in the martial arts because they deserve it. And a lot of those people, they're teaching for the fun of it, which we all are at this point. We're teaching for the fun of it. They're not looking for all this, travel and get all these awards and this, that, and the other. And especially if you have to pay for them all the time. So our whole thing is legacy is earned. It's not purchased, which
Amen.
goes against the grain. I've got people that have told me, well, that just doesn't work for us. I'm like, okay, whatever, that's fine. I said, but
What part
you're
doesn't work for 'em?
the money part
By not taking the money.
by not taking the money. I had a guy the other week tell me that, hey, he goes, I'm going to put a lot of time and effort into my event. I want to get paid for it. I get it. That's fine. But I'm way different than him. Like I say, we acknowledge people and we honor people based upon the real legacy that they've earned. And we've denied people because of, they either say they get their ranks out of a paper mill. They get their rank from overseas, or in one case, I had a guy that was supposedly a ninth Dan, but his 2/5 Dan students promoted him from seventh to ninth, and it's on his ninth Dan certificate. There's 3 people that signed it: 2/5 Dans and a 4th Dan on his ninth Dan certificate. There were no 10th Dans on there. There was no anybody higher than him signature on that certificate. And I said, in what martial arts universe is that legitimate? You may think it's okay in yours, but it has no bearing in mine. To me, that's not real. And so we denied him. We've had several other people the exact same way. We want to make sure that they're real, that they're not fake, they're not frauds. Of course, we want to keep out the felons and the criminal aspect of it, things like that. So we do the research, and
That's
if you
good
don't,
because the Hall of Fame is more than just what goes on in the dojo, right?
exactly, yeah. I mean, you know, you know, you have to be more than just a teacher. You've got to, what do you give back to the community, not just to the martial arts community, but what do you give back to your community, And so that's where we're at. And
Have you heard from organizations, I mean, that are charging money? Are they pushing back, saying things to you, calling you out, shooting you emails, texts?
no, like I say, this one person did, but that's okay. Like I say, to each his own. And the other bad part about this whole thing is martial artists have some of the the biggest egos that I know of in any sport in the world. For some reason, I don't know if it's because we never really had anything, or if it's that need to be put up on a pedestal, or what it is. But there seems to be a lot of people out there that have that need. Um, I mean, I'll admit I've gotten a lot of awards through the years. Um, Most of them are in my storage closet. They're not hanging up. I met and I went mainly because I wanted to meet more people. I wanted to expand my circle. I wanted to expand my circle of knowledge. So you go and you meet these people and you train with them and you talk and you get different ideas about how to train, how to run a school, all that kind of stuff. Because when you own a school, to me, you have to do everything. Um, and you can't just keep doing things because that's the way we've always done it. It doesn't work. It will fail you at some point in time. Um, so to me, I'm always researching. I'm always learning. I'm going, always, is there a better way to do this? Or is there a different way to do this that really is better, right? Um, you know, even with my training, I'm researching, why was this form done? What are the movements in this form mean? And, that's another subject of where a lot of schools that I've been to, they're strictly sport. You go, well, why, what's the reason to do those moves in that form? I don't know. I don't know. We were never told.
Yeah.
Well, to me, you're just dancing then, or call it what it is. You're just doing it for the sport of it. Whereas I want to do it for the self-defense of it. Okay. I want to learn why we do it this way. And, that to me, that's gone in a lot of schools these days because instructors get complacent about, well, I'm teaching 5 days a week or 6 days a week or 7 days a week. I don't have time. That's your problem then. Take the time. Take the time to figure it out, to make yourself better. If you're making yourself better, you're making your students better.
Yeah. Amen.
And so that's kind of where I'm at with things.
When you teach, I'm curious. You've seen so many different students through your time as a teacher. When you do you have you identified special students that came in that are just physically gifted?
I will say that yes, you can spot them right away. There's and I don't care what sport you have. I mean, I've
Yeah.
I've coached basketball, I've coached baseball, all that kind of stuff. And you see kids who are natural athletes, and those that are not natural athletes, they can't walk and chew gum at the same time. And I've been that way from time to time. I was, it took me a while to learn a form.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I will never get this. But perseverance and discipline and putting in the time and the effort, then yes, I did finally learn it. But yeah, there's a few kids that have come along, and been fortunate to have several students that they've not only done quite well in competitions, they've competed on the national level and won medals, and and we've got kids that have never competed at all. They don't want to. They don't aspire to. And that's fine. That's up to
That's okay.
them.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, there are some special ones that you can see that are extremely athletic.
Do you train them differently? Do you teach them differently?
No,
Or no? Okay.
no. I let them be them. So, I've got one young lady in the school right now who just got her black belt last year. She came to me from another school. She had already been a brown belt in another system, and she's phenomenal. You watch her do her forms, and it's like wow. And then a lot of people in the school are like, wow, I wish I could do that. And I'm like, you can if you put in the work and the desire to do it, just like she does, because that's what she wants to do. The other ones, they're just kind of going through the motions, going through the movements, because that's where they're at this time in their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe 10, 15 years down the road, it'll finally kick into them to go, oh yeah, maybe I should have done this a little differently. Yeah.
That I love it. I love training. I love the martial arts. Um, and for gentlemen like yourself and the Barongans, just your dedication and just thank you for that.
Oh, you're quite welcome. The thing is, like I say, I teach a lot of different things.
Mhm.
I don't want to be boxed in by one thing. It doesn't matter to me. As long as you're learning something it's fun to do, then why not do it? All of our weapons forms are from other styles.
That's incredible.
Our bow forms are from Shindo Jin and Ryu. Our Sai form is from Sho and Ryu. Or so why not? Why look at just style? Why not look at, hey, let's learn that.
Yeah.
Let's learn that. Let's do it. Let's learn the self-defense out of it. Let's learn, why we do it the way that we do it. Because to me, that's fun. I don't want to be boxed in by something.
I tell you, it must be something in the water at the UKKS because, you know, Monday after Hanshi and everybody spent time with you Saturday, we're working on your bow form, all class on Monday.
Good.
And there's been times, where I feel like, okay, I think I've got this down, and I come in and Professor Hanshi just throws something totally new into the mix, and I'm like drinking from a fire hydrant all over again.
Right. Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah. Because there's so much out there, and that's the other thing too. And you weren't able to be there on Saturday, but you've heard me say many times before when I've been out and had the pleasure of teaching you guys, ask us questions. Don't be afraid to ask a question, even if you think it's dumb and absurd. It's not, because we've got a lot of knowledge to dump before our end of time. And if you guys don't ask the questions, you're never going to know, right? And, going back even to teaching, the reasons why moves in a form are done, in my class, I keep it simple to say, look, here is why we do this move. Let's practice it over and over and over and over and over again till it's, easy to remember. Oh, guess what? Here's three other ways. Here's three other reasons.
Yeah.
Okay? Because a fight is not choreographed. A form is not, a full fight. You're taking movements from this form to that form to that form to that form, and that's your fight out on the street. And so if you can adapt and learn and evolve and change through all of that, now you have a better understanding and a better grasp of why you're doing things in the first place. Don't just walk through the motions.
So what does Don Mathews look like without martial arts in his life?
I'd be sitting outside watching the grass grow, I guess. I, I don't really know. I mean, I've been, this is 43 years. And I know for some people that's not a long time. For others, they go, wow, that's like forever. But, my circle of friends, I mean, I know people that have been doing this for 70 plus years. And, I look at them going, wow, can I reach 70? I don't know, maybe. Um, but I don't, I don't see me doing away with this in any way, shape, or form. Um, I would probably, well, it just probably wouldn't work out too well.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got other hobbies. I mean, I do
Yeah,
other
for sure.
things. I mean, I could always keep busy at doing something, right? And, but could I ever walk away from this? I don't think so. I've got, I've got too much to share, and I love teaching, and I love teaching it to people that want to learn. So when I'm traveling around and people are inviting me to their school and going, hey, you want to teach for an hour? Absolutely. Yeah.
stuff.
Lo love it, and even, I walk away from that hour and go, man, I should have told them about this, and I should have told them about that. Well, maybe next time, maybe I'll get a chance to come around and do it again, because there's so much I want to just dump out there, which is good and bad. It's good for me, bad for you, because you're just trying to learn the one thing instead of several things.
Grabbing at stuff. If I
Yeah,
can just catch something.
right, right. But I love doing it. I love
Yeah.
doing it.
How do you want to be remembered? Your legacy.
There's words I could use, but I'm not going to right now, because people are going to go, yeah, he was a, I guess I hope that I have in some way, shape, or form changed somebody's life somewhere along the line. I hope that, and I know that I already have. I've had parents and former students, and they're teenagers, or they're in their 20s, and they've got children, and parent will come up and go, oh, do you remember when Billy was in your class? I go, yeah. Well, Billy's got 2 kids now, and he's always talking about the time that he spent with you, and and he's doing things on a better path than what he was.
That's good to
And
hear.
that's great,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of what I want to be remembered for, is that I made a difference in someone's life somewhere along the line. They might not stay in martial arts, and you know, that's fine, but did I make a difference to them?
Yeah. Those lessons definitely transcend the dojo.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was fortunate enough to have people in my life as well, martial arts background that changed my life, and humility was gained from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the other thing too. If there's a lot of martial artists out there, and I don't want to put everybody in the same bucket, but there's a lot that haven't learned that humility. And
Yeah.
they're walking around like they know everything in the world. And I certainly don't. Like I say, I'm still learning. I'm still researching. I'm still studying, and I don't want to ever say that I know everything, because I don't. And I hope I never do, because that's the other fun part that I like, is figuring stuff out, and when that light bulb comes on, and go, oh man, yeah, that's why we were doing that, or this is pretty cool. Here's a different way of doing this, and so that's what it is to me.
All right. We'll change it up
All
just
right,
for a moment here.
all right.
All right. Favorite martial arts movie?
Oh my goodness. The first one that actually comes to my mind is The Perfect Weapon with Jeff Speak.
Good movie.
Yeah, very, very good movie. Um, did I watch all the Bruce Lee movies? Yes, because there were only 5 of them, so
Yeah.
it wasn't too hard. Other than that, I wouldn't say that there was a martial arts movie that I go, I want to watch that again.
Because you're a pure martial artist. You look at technique and everything, right? So you probably watch a martial arts movie a lot different than most people watch martial arts.
Well, to a degree, yes. But also, I had the pleasure of training with Fumio Demura, and Sensei Demura was in a few different movies. He was Pat Morita's double in all of the Karate Kid movies, and so when we trained, he would teach us, this is real, this is Hollywood. And it was fun doing it with him, because, well, he made it fun, and he was just a blast to be around. He was a very special person, and a very special person to me as a martial artist. And so yeah, I mean, and then there's some, let's face it, there are some martial artists that have done movies that probably shouldn't have done movies. Um, we
Give
want
me one.
Nope, no, I can't
Yeah,
name names.
that's good. That's good.
But they're the B and C movies, the ones that don't make it to the big screen.
Gotcha. All right, you're in the gym, you're pumping iron, working out, going after it. What are you
Yeah.
listening to?
Oh my goodness. You're probably going to think I'm crazy, but I like AC/DC and Steppenwolf and some of the old hardcore, real rock. That's what's playing on my list when
I
I'm
I
really
would have had you
working out.
pegged for a classic rock guy.
Well, even deeper into classic rock, like I say, you put on some, I've got a AC/DC CD that I've probably worn out by listening to it.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones, things like that. That was on my workout list.
So how about when we come for the Warriors Legacy Hall of Fame weekend? What karaoke song can I expect Hanshi Don Mathews to get up and break out?
There won't be one because there's not going to be any karaoke. At least, there might be down the street, but not where we're going to be at, and certainly not where I am. Karaoke means tone deaf.
Tone deaf.
Yeah, that's what it means. It means
All
tone
right, I
deaf.
didn't know that.
Yes. But speaking of karaoke, many, many years ago, I was fortunate to train with 4 members of the women's Japanese national team. 3 of them spoke no English. The 4th one spoke some, and she was the 3-time WKF World Kata champion. So, which is very impressive because at the WKF, there's probably 112, 115 countries that attend. Unlike, the subject we could talk to is about the number of world champions here in the United States. She was a true world champion. But anyways, I got to train with them one weekend, and they wanted to go out to karaoke on Saturday night, after 8 hours of training. And
8 hours of training.
yeah, eight
Wow.
hours of training. Yeah. Um, and that was just on Saturday because we did 4 hours on Friday night and we did another 4 hours on Sunday. Yeah. That's what we used to do.
That's impressive.
Sometimes it was 8 hours on Sunday. But yeah, so we went out to karaoke and they had a blast because they all wanted to sing, and I sat with me and a couple of other people sat with the 3 girls, and we had I don't know, probably about a 3-hour conversation, and they knew no English whatsoever. And we would draw pictures. It was like a charades, conversation, but we had a blast. We would, like I say, we would draw pictures, and they would tell us the word for it, and we would tell them the word for it in English, and we'd go back and forth, but yeah, it was fun. Yeah, great time. A lot of good training though. Lot of good training.
I bet. I bet.
And I was very fortunate. Again, and most of those training sessions were 3-day sessions. There were 3 days with Kiyoshi Yamazaki, sometimes 4 days. I trained 3 days in one session with K-pop. I trained with the chief instructor for the IDF, and that's all we did for 3 days was things that they did in the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Forces. So it was very hardcore. It wasn't for the weak. It wasn't for the I got a sore in my pinky. No, no, we beat on each other, no pads, because they trained in real combat, real life stuff. And so that's how it was. I mean, if you didn't keep up, there's the door. Get out.
It's amazing we can go from karaoke to Israeli Special Forces.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. What a
That's
transition.
the full range. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So what advice would you give any person that's on the fence that wants to possibly join a martial art?
Well, do some research for one. Go to the school, see what they're doing. Do you like what they're doing? Is it something that you can see yourself doing? Because again, people in our society today, they don't want to put forth the time and the effort. And I hate to even say this, but a lot of adults don't want to do it anymore. You know, I can't tell you the amount of adults that have brought their children into my school that go, I used to do this.
Yeah.
They go, well, why don't you do it now? Why don't you continue? Why aren't you training with your child? Oh, I'm too old. You're 32 years old. Um, you know, you're not too old. I'm not trying to make people into Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris or anything like that. I teach to your body level and to your skills. But they don't want to put forth the effort, the discipline, or the time, or any of that stuff. So, somebody that's walking in the door, they need to put forth that discipline to do it, if that's really what they want to do. It's not one of these, well, I'll do it for 2 weeks, or I'll try it for a month and see how it is. There's absolutely no way that you would know after a month if it's good or not. Now, maybe the instructor might not be good, but here again, you've got to put forth the effort, and I don't see a lot of people doing that anymore. It's now there's some pockets around the country that kids are walking in and they're doing things, but is it just for fun, or is it for real? And the other thing too is, can you afford it? Does it fit within your budget? If it doesn't fit within your budget, then, we both know that it costs money to get good training.
Yeah.
It also doesn't have to cost a lot to get good training. And, there's schools out there that are charging enormous amounts and have very bad training. There's some schools out there that aren't charging anything that you get great training at.
Mhm.
And that's hard to decide, and decipher for someone brand new that has no idea what's going on. I get that. But if you can't just do it by the telephone. I get people that call me up going, hey, I want to talk to you about your school. Okay, here's what I do. And well, again, they don't know Shotokan from Shidoru, from Taekwondo to anything, right?
Mhm.
You have to go into the school. You have to go sit. You have to go watch the classes. You've got to interact with the people that are there. Is it an environment that you want to be in? Does it make you feel like family? And you know as well as I do that we're a huge family.
Huge.
And for me, the martial arts family is more than my own family. You know,
My wife came away
um,
from Sunday just shaking her head. I cannot believe how much of a family that is.
right, exactly, exactly. And you know, um, Professor and I met 2015, and we instantly became good friends. Now we're great friends. Now he's more to me than my own brothers are, and that's how it's become. And that's how it can be for anybody that wants to embrace it, but you have to embrace it. I mean, I've got students that come and go, and I've got other ones that want to know more things, that do ask the questions, that are more involved and stuff like that. And they're understanding what the family, thing is. But there's other ones that that's not what they're looking for. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, but it can be that and a whole lot more,
Yeah.
you know. And you know, I know that, for me, I've got people in my circle that if they called me up and go, "Hey, I need you." Where? When? There's no other questions. It's let me grab my keys, put my shoes on, and tell me where I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that's fantastic, and that's another thing that I love about it. And I don't want to ever give that up.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever give that up.
Sir, you've been extremely um, open, and I really appreciate your time as always. And man, I just love rapping with you.
Well, I mean, I'm sure we could sit here and talk for hours about all
Yeah.
kind of different subjects, and I always tell people I will give you the most honest answer that I can.
Hmm.
You might not like it, but I'm going to give it to you anyways.
Yeah.
And you asked me earlier on about, me changing things in my school and how others would look at that. I don't care how they would look at it. Again, they're not paying my bills, right? They're not doing the training that I am. They're not doing the teaching that I am. And does it go against some of the more traditional, if you can define traditional anymore? Yes, it does. It goes against the grain. Uh, because I do believe that we need to evolve. Martial arts needs to evolve for us to survive. And if we look at it as a whole, we've had, back in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, very, very strict schools.
Hmm.
I'll say it that way. Things started to evolve to where we have gymnastics. We have what we call gym katas. You've got musical katas. You've got creative kata forms. You got stuff that goes against the traditional grain. You see it in competition all the time. I'm sure it was at the IMARS. I'm
Oh yeah,
sure if I
for
walked
sure.
in there, I could point it out, right?
Oh, for sure.
Is it good or is it bad? Well, yes and yes. Um, because we haven't called it what it really is. You wanna do a gymnastics form, then call it that.
Yeah.
But don't call it traditional. Don't say that that's real. Don't say that those are real self-defense movements because they're not. They wouldn't work. Okay, so let's stop calling it that, right? But we've got all of that out there. There were schools that were doing what is it, that parkour for a while. There's schools out there that take kids now at 18 months. Yeah.
Martial arts schools.
Yes.
Wow.
There are programs for 18, bring your 18-month-old child in here. We'll start them out.
Isn't that called daycare?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, um, so martial arts has evolved, but it's also evolved towards the money aspect. Whatever an instructor can make money off of to pay his bills and pay his salary and all that. Because in some respects, we've made this into a profession. We've made this into, a livelihood. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, but if we look way back when, it was some of their livelihoods, but they were taken care of. There were other ways that they got, you know, paid their money.
Yeah.
So, like I say, I'm evolving to where it works for me and for my students. And if that doesn't fit with how somebody else does things, don't care. That's
All right. Final question.
uh-oh,
Final question. Let's see.
getting
Your
getting
favorite
dark and deep here.
yeah, this is super deep. Your
Okay.
favorite technique.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I can narrow it down to a technique. There's, back when I could kick very well. It was a sweep into a kick. But now I'm more into the lock up your arm and rip your shoulder out and beat you with the bloody stump.
You're gonna have to teach me that when I come there in June, that Thursday night.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, next time I'm out in the Iowa way, we'll have to have a class on some of that. I think, yeah, you missed the last time I did it. I think Sean was the recipient of
Good. Good.
all that. I think he had some sore shoulders the next day.
He's fine. He's a big guy.
Yeah, I know. He can take it. I gave him some Kleenex. So.
Good. Good. Sir, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely,
Always
absolutely
a
love
pleasure.
it. Absolutely love
And
it.
if there's anything you need from me, just let me know. And thank you for
Oh,
doing
absolutely,
this.
absolutely. And likewise, my phone's always on and available, and anytime you want to call and to talk about anything, I'm always here.
I've learned a ton from you already.
And like I say, I'm really considering coming out to that IMARS and taking the Iowa State title from you next year.
You probably should just stay in Ohio. No need to make the trip.
What's the age? What's the age group?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Not sure.